So, this month's theme is wilderness. So wilderness is something that is often thought about somewhere out there, completely remote, unconnected to any of us. And it's interesting how the different cities around the world are interpreting this theme. But something that was interesting that we tried to investigate is wilderness inside of us. And that's where Marina, who's today's speaker, comes into play. So I learned about Marina through a friend, and I've been hearing about this kind of people who live a zigzag career, where they kind of go from one place to another to another. And at first I thought, okay, maybe Marina has one of those zigzag careers that goes in the creative world and does different things. But I don't think that's quite right. I think what's more likely is that it's a boomerang career. You kind of go out and explore, and you come back to your inner self. So without further ado, please welcome Marina.
Thank you. Yeah, just first, thank you, Al. I'm really happy to be here. I'm just going to take a minute to settle myself. Yeah, what Al just said actually is exactly the truth. So firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Marina South. I'm, I guess, an artist. And I guess the reason I say an artist is because it feels more encompassing of just creativity in general. I'd say most of my work is rooted in social projects, environmental projects, and I'm also the founder of a, I guess, concept studio. So I don't want to say brand, it's a concept studio, because as I kind of grow and evolve, so does it. So we really kind of explore art, nature, and very much the sort of sensory experience, so coming back to what it is to be human. And I guess I also need to say I'm an activist at heart, so everything kind of comes back to how I can give back. And for me, you know, creativity is really a tool that everyone has. You know, it's something, you don't need material assets, you don't need anything to be creative, and that really is, you know, our biggest tool. And I think where we are right now is challenging, and you know, there's so much surfacing. I think we've kind of been on this sort of ladder and we've peaked, and now there's just like this feeling of kind of chaos and what's going to happen next. And one of my favorite quotes by Anaïs Nin is, "In chaos there is fertility." And I literally think of that every day, because I think that's really where kind of the artists, you know, we get to work. We start to think about what we have in our mind, in our experience, in our journey. We get to sort of be really receptive and yeah, and act. Really, you know, create from that place. That for me is kind of true creativity. So I feel like in terms of wilderness, you know, that word connects to me so much. And, you know, the kind of true meaning of wilderness, it isn't this just like exploration into nature. It's really like this raw, kind of sometimes quite hostile place. And I think probably when you think about your own life, you can relate to that in many ways. And so much of this journey that I've gone on is kind of, I guess, rooted in, you know, my childhood and my experience. I grew up in a very rural part of Wales, southwest Wales, and yeah, we grew up with no money. And so for me, creativity was, you know, really born from necessity. If we didn't create, we didn't have what we wanted. So I think, you know, kind of my family was so good at providing that. And when I look back, so much of it was that kind of sensory experience. So scent, sound, cooking, just like pulling together all of that kind of love. Like I never felt poor. I mean, I did when I went to sort of school and experienced all of the bullying and the things that, you know, you're suddenly met with the reality. But in terms of kind of my everyday experience at home, it was just a place of pure creativity. And so I think, kind of looking back now, so much of my experience with wilderness, I don't even connect that to the raw kind of like landscape that I lived in, which I'm so blessed to have lived near the ocean and near the mountains and kind of had that as my playground. But really wilderness, it was, that kind of being on the edge of society in many ways and looking in and really sort of, witnessing and seeing where my place was. And I think that probably so much of my life has been trying to find a place where I feel a sense of belonging, or I really feel like, okay, this is my, this is it, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I searched, and so, this kind of childhood and not really understanding then what I did have and just kind of always searching for it, and then leading me to London and to a world of, fashion. I went into fashion and, no regrets ever. But, this kind of ladder that we're all really sort of conditioned to, climb. And these narratives of what life should be and, what I should achieve. And in theory, I did them. I kind of went from A to B and C and so on and so forth, and really got everything I thought I needed. But I still, actually, the more I got what I needed, the more I sort of felt this, discontentment and disconnection to not only kind of my external environment, but my internal sort of landscape. And so, I'd been in the industry for well over a decade. And, fascinating in so many ways. Like now there really are no regrets, but I really got to this point where it felt like paint by numbers. And I just was having these moments where it was almost like out of body, almost like, this isn't, what I expected or the feeling that I expected to have. So, I didn't really know what to sort of do with that. And then kind of health came into the question. So kind of mental and physical health got tested. And I was just like, wow, this really isn't what I expected. This really isn't what I anticipated. So I had to then go into that kind of deep dive, that like research period, the realization, kind of uncovering the fact that a lot of what I was experiencing, I'd instigated. I'd sort of, created this life that was then causing me this kind of turmoil. So I guess I was really at that stage just at a crossroads, a complete crossroads. I either kind of carry on this path of, this kind of like formulaic path in many ways, or I don't, and I create a new life. And so I hadn't been impulsive for many years, but at this point, it felt impulsive, like it felt quite radical, and I literally just kind of quit it all with no plan. And that isn't, the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but it was what I really needed to do. It's what I really, it was like my waking thought was I just needed that kind of clean break. And so I did. And I had, all of these words of like, are you sure? Is this right? What are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And this is, pre-COVID. So I feel like a lot has changed in the landscape of kind of how we work and the ways we get to work. But this was prior. So it wasn't everyone working from home. It wasn't that I could just talk to everyone. It was, it was a moment of actual wilderness again. And a lot of those, I had all of these ideas of like, this is what I've been waiting for. I'll just get out into the world and I'll be super confident and it's just my time to like shine. And so actually everything I wanted to feel, I was going back into these really conditioned thoughts of what I should be and what life should be, and that was my opportunity to be all of those things. And then it was the complete opposite. I completely crashed. Everything, everything crashed. Again, I just kind of went into this hole. I was really on the edge, looking in at the world, at myself, real kind of big questions. What does it all mean? It was almost like I'd been sort of institutionalized in many ways, and I was having to then go through this process of breaking out of that, I guess it was like a process of deconditioning. I wasn't aware of that then, but during that time it was. And I was like in my little flat in London and just, talking to my cats and trying to figure out the meaning of life and what, my role within life should be, and realizing that through this big, huge leap, I still wasn't doing everything I thought I wanted to do, which was just art and creativity and giving back and connecting with communities. And I sort of lost so much of my confidence and was doing all this just fragmented work. So really then I was like all over the place. I was styling, I was art directing, I was designing. It was like I just didn't know what was going on. It was really a whirlwind, but totally necessary. It's like I needed to fall apart completely to then begin kind of rebuilding something. So that was about 5 years ago. And then, we know everything that's kind of happened in recent years, but I guess my journey with that, with kind of this rebuilding was a slow process. It's still a process, it's never ending. There is no enlightenment, there's no day that you wake up and you're transcended and you know the meaning of life. And I think we're in a time now with so many opinions and so many tools and rituals and everything. But really, really the answer is actually just stepping into that wilderness. It's just stepping into that raw, wild place. It doesn't mean you have to actually do anything radical. You can bring that energy to wherever you go, to your current job, to your current relationships. It's really about returning to truth. And I think that's kind of my quest in life, is to always return back to truth. What does that really mean? And, so much of kind of what we experience are other people's narratives. They're not even our narratives. So much of what we do isn't even benefiting us. It's benefiting like a teeny tiny percentage of people. So I found myself really beginning to understand what it was I was craving. Like all of these feelings that I wanted were feelings that I had. Like, when I was a child, they were just, I had them in abundance. And it really was just less of everything, Creativity as, playtime, as a form of exploration and expression. I'm under no illusion that we live in a world that requires us to make money. We need sustenance. I really deeply understand that. So I'm not coming at this from like an elitist point of view that's like, just be creative and play, and we, will receive, and all of the abundance will come to us. But actually, it's this bizarre thing of, I took huge pay cuts, and life wasn't really different. In fact, it was better. It was like I began to establish these other forms of wealth, which was like time, and I'm like such a daydreamer. I'm really a daydreamer. I can just sit and daydream. And I used to be really hard on myself. I need to be proactive, and people are getting up at 5 a.m. and they're juicing and they're yoga and they're this, and then they've got their practice and blah, 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 and I just can't do it. And then I realized I can't do it. I don't want to do it. It's just actually not the way I am. And I don't really think it's the way anyone is. Maybe there's a lot of money to be made from it. Maybe I'm just not savvy enough. Maybe I should be sort of telling you the things that you have to do and I have the answer. But I don't, and I think I never will, and I don't think any of us do. So for me, I just came back to that pure place. I left London full time. I split my time now between Wales. So kind of back in the homeland in many ways, literally in the mountains and by the ocean, really reconnecting with my family, just going back to everything we used to do, like the cooking, playing Pink Floyd, just being with my animals, and just allowing the kind of process of life to unfold. I think at this stage, you know, I'd be lying if I said that I'm completely kind of ego-free. Again, I don't believe that's part of us. I think ego is there for a reason. I introduced myself as an artist. I told you what I did. Really, the reality is I'm just a human being. That's it. That's all that we are. So we're always still in this kind of conditioned society. We have to explain what we do and who we are. But really right now, this is exactly like Al said. It's you know, full circle. Circles have always been part of my life, actually. I had like a tattoo at a very young, illegal age, which was a circle, and I didn't really know why. And I think that there's just this, you know, kind of this cyclical way of like living, and I feel so almost like privileged that I've allowed myself to sort of come to a place that, you know, I am creative again. Like I'm immersing in that daily. I'm managing to make some money out of it. I'm managing to sleep in if I want to sleep in. But really, it's not about that. Like I changed my life drastically, but really, it's not about that. Like I really believe, having kind of gone through this sort of cycle, I really believe it is an internal thing. I think you can bring it anywhere. I think what the world needs now more than anything is just truth. It's just truth. It's for us to just like cut through the noise and the nonsense, cut through all of these different things that you're supposed to do and supposed to achieve, because we all know the reality. We are born and then we depart, right? And it is short. It is really, really short. And I think, oh my God, I had all of this turmoil. I wasted time, but I didn't. It's like the wilderness is that place of brutality and rawness, and I think art and creativity is a tool to be able to explore that, express it, share it, connect, and just keep it real, keep it wild. And so that's really all I can kind of share with everyone is just, you know, like Al said, everyone is creative, and that kind of external expression, I think, is key. You know, ultimately, we create the landscape that we see. There are so many of us, and when we begin to really stand in our truth and share that with one another, kind of come together to just share, explore, and express, that is then the world that we see. We see a world, many aspects that we don't like, right? But we are so many. So I wanted to just say to everyone that in an envelope, and I didn't place them everywhere, but there are spares. You don't have to open now, but there is like, I created a tool over a year ago. It's like a deck of cards. And it was just because, again, there was so many rituals of meditation and yoga, and I'm so like a tangible, physical person, and I like words and visuals and art and poetry. And so I know that when you feel discombobulated and disconnected, that yes, all of those things are incredible. But for me, like I love that kind of external sort of way of activating senses. So I created really a tool for myself that I also do, you know, share with others. So that when I am in that place, which still happens, will probably happen forever, I can just pull out a card, and it just kind of brings me back to everything that is nature, the soul, art, and just kind of prompt that kind of internal activation. So there is one for everyone, and I think there's enough for everyone here. We have spares also, so we will leave them on the breakfast table for anyone that hasn't got one. But just thanking you all, and here's a little video to just kind of activate those senses.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marina.
Thank
you.
you.
Another round of applause. There are lots of envelopes around, so if you haven't gotten one. But I'm going to open up to some questions. So if anyone's got questions for Marina. But I really love this idea of measuring wealth in other ways.
Yeah.
And measuring wealth in time,
Yeah.
in friends. My favorite one is measuring wealth in recipes that you have.
Definitely.
But what is your current kind of way of measuring your success now that you've gone full circle or in that circle?
I think just when I feel like okay. I know that sounds so bizarre, but I think for so long I've searched for joy and happiness. And I actually read something interesting recently that humans aren't, I know this is not to be depressing, we're not meant to be happy. And I think that there's like all of these industries popping up to encourage us to be really joyful and happy. And so I think we're always chasing that. In a way, we're actually meant to survive, right? And so it's normal that we feel worried, stressed, anxious. And it was like this moment of like, so when I just feel like in that balanced, calm state, I feel really rich. Like it just feels really nourishing rather than those kind of highs that are often followed by the lows. And we're kind of still like, even in this, there's this huge sort of like well-being and spiritual kind of industry rising, right? And it's this like, here's how you reach abundance and success and happiness and joy and blah, blah, blah. And again, I just think it's another sort of like negative side of capitalism, because capitalism could be good, of like trying to just obtain all of these things rather than just being like, I'm okay. So for me, that's when I feel like, I'm winning. It's when I just feel okay. Yeah.
Not in that cycle of I want more, need more.
Just waking up and just feeling like, okay, cool. Not like, or like, I wish I felt more happy or more joyful. Then I feel the most, I think, at peace. And I think when I'm at peace is when I feel definitely the wealthiest.
I love that. Any questions? Anyone? Yeah.
Okay. It was really interesting when you were talking about kind of when you were, sorry to think of the negative bit, when you were like down at the bottom and trying to figure out kind of what you needed, etc. What I was intrigued to know is what tools you use to, say, break through the noise and actually figure out what was really going on. Because I find often we may think that, I don't know, I use the example, sorry to go on, but like a good friend of mine loves water skiing. I'm always like, I hate water skiing and I don't want to do it. But then actually, when you talk a bit more, you find out actually is it about worrying if you're going to get injured or worrying about this or worrying about that. So I was wondering how you broke through the initial noise to get to the real issue of what was going on.
I think like lots of things. Like I've broke down many times, right? Like when I fall, I can fall really hard. So friends for me, like close friends are like always a savior to me, and they like pick me up when I really couldn't pick myself up. And when then I'm kind of up is when then I begin to sort of be able to think, right, what is it I need? And I know it might sound really cliche, but actually taking like me and putting myself in the rawest environment in terms of like landscape really is actually the biggest therapy for me. It's actually when I get clarity, because I think, the ocean is always my therapy, because it's when I feel sort of so small in like the best way, right? It's just like, oh my God, like it's so vast, and it's like God in itself, right? Like that's my God. And so then it's just like this, it's like that calming of the nervous system, and then that's when that clarity starts to surface. But another thing is also externalizing what's going on inside, because so often we kind of, when we feel, we like recoil and we become sort of quite locked. So when we can begin to externalize, and this is true creativity, because for ages all my creativity was attached to, well, how can I make money? How can I be successful? But actually just externalizing, so like movement, dancing, like screaming, writing just random words. I can't sit and tell you to journal because I haven't got that level of structure in me, but just like, just that externalizing, whether that's talking, screaming, that's kind of what begins to help me make sense of things. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Geneva.
Yeah.
So the question is, what tools did you use to deprogram?
Yeah, yeah. I think again, it's creativity. Like, I always come back to that. Like, I think art, and you don't have to be an artist to create, obviously, but just that, like, expression. You know, there are tools, you know, practical tools, therapy and acupuncture, I always come back to. By the way, acupuncture, like, has saved my life, I think, many times. So from, like, an actual, like, tool, like, physical point of view, I always, if I'm feeling really, like, my nervous system is really all over the place, then I'll do acupuncture. If I really need to work through things, then I'll do therapy. And then it really is that, like, externalization of creativity, so that I'm not kind of, like, trapping it inside of me. And that was the reason I created the Creative Soul deck, because I had all of these, like, things that I was trying to do, and I was like, I just want something simple that when I'm feeling like here, there, here, like disjointed, like I'm in separate places, I can just, like, pull a card, and it gives me this kind of, like, grounding of who I am, which is I am just nature. So I'm not, like, separate to what's happening out there. Sometimes I do, like, watching the seasons really helps me. And I remember just watching a tree once, and it was like all its leaves were falling off. And I just thought, oh God, it's so funny, because at that point in autumn, when the tree, everything falls off and the colours change and it's just there, like, we don't judge that. But when it's ourselves, we really judge it. So kind of living in that sort of more cyclical way, so in harmony sort of with nature, also really helps, because you just realise, oh, well, that is actually just happening in nature, so it's happening to me as well. Yeah.
Craig.
I love when you said about your reconnection.
I'm just going to grab my water.
I love when you said about your reconnection to Wales.
Yeah.
My dad grew up in Pembrokeshire, so I was always in Haverford.
That's where I'm from.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. So I was always in Haverfordwest.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, we can talk about that after.
Where I went to school.
So whenever I used to go as a kid, I grew up in Cambridge, so it was like another world. It's like, oh my God, how did you live here? Like, there was one bus every 4 hours or something. Like, so I'm really fascinated about, like, what feelings you got whenever you came from London into Wales, and then kind of like what kept you, like, coming back to London, or like what made you not want to stay, kind of.
And what made me not want to stay in London, or
no, like,
what made me not want to stay in Wales?
or both, or like yeah. I'm trying to think of my question now. But what are those feelings whenever you kind of arrive into Wales from London?
Yeah. So it's really funny, because when I was younger, I was always really, when I left for London, like, I remember the first time I came to London, my sister was studying in, I can't remember what university, and she was living in Bethnal Green. I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I got really badly bullied for a really, really long time at home. So I was like, there was this sort of desperation to, I guess, get away from that. So London just felt like, oh, I can just be amongst so much, you know, like, that's not going to happen, because I'll just be amongst so much. And obviously, you know, Pembrokeshire's small, and oh, gee, so many synergies. So I was kind of like, in my younger years, I was just really, like, bombing my way back home, being with my family, and then just, like, getting back to London. And then, yeah, like, as I started to get older, I've just found myself, like, craving these things, and I wasn't even, like, attaching. It was just, like, more feelings, and then like, I just wanted to go back more and more and be by the sea, and, like, listen to Pink Floyd playing from my dad's garage, just like those really simple things. I guess, you know, over the past couple of years, I was like craving it more and more, and the city less and less, because I just needed to be, I guess for me, what the city started to represent, it was like that living, breathing capitalism, right? Like, so everywhere I went, it felt like networking, rather than just like, I know I'm talking about what I do, but I didn't want to talk about what I was doing. I just wanted to talk about like dinner, or, you know, my cats, and I just didn't want to talk about that stuff anymore. So then when I went home, it was just so refreshing. Everything I'd like run away from, yeah, nothing had really changed, and it was just like that simplicity. And I was just craving it more and more, which was then I made the decision I need to live back there as much as I can. So now I'm sort of like in London, in Pembrokeshire, in the Brecon Beacons. So I sort of like a bit kind of all over the place. And now it feels so good. Like, it feels right. It feels like the land can talk to me. I can talk to it. Like, literally, even when I crossed that bridge, the Severn Bridge, I just felt, like... And there's just, I know, there's like this sense of community like no other. Like, again, even the things that I was like, everyone knows everything. It doesn't feel that way to me now. Like, I don't care. It just feels really like everyone actually does say hello. Everyone does chat. Everyone is talking about what you're having for dinner. And it just feels really like real. And I guess that's what I was really craving after, especially being in fashion for so long. So yeah, I think it's exactly like Al said. Like, it is, like, life is just like, it's just a circle. Like, even if you think about, you know, where we go, it's like we go into the earth. Like, it's just this, like, cycle. And I think, you know, you end up just coming back to that point, or at least I did. So, yeah, now it just feels really nourishing. But I also, when I come into London, don't feel like, oh, God, like, I'm not like that. Like, I'm enjoying it for things like this, you know? And, yeah, so it feels more balanced now. Yeah, so many similarities. It's crazy.
I think people are wondering what you're having for dinner now. We've got a few questions. So, Uslan?
It was more following on from that comment, really, because it sounded like a sense of belonging at home as opposed to city and country, that difference. Because I'm somebody who is from London and don't
Yeah.
have that, luxury is not the right word, but the ability to go, and I could do it, I had friends out, a place a bit less than family. But I realised even coming back from a trip somewhere, or working outside of London and coming back in, as soon as I get into that the big major train station, I do feel at home.
Yeah.
And it's another thing. It's not necessarily, you know, it's because you do feel like all this when you're in a big city, you feel like alone, and it happened at a very similar situation with my job, similar time as well. Like, when you feel cut off with it, but
Yeah.
like, you can feel that sense of belonging. It's where it is sort of internally. And I think that's what you've expanded on.
Yeah.
But here, it's like, actually does make sense. But I've crossed that bridge, but I don't. Well, so it
No.
doesn't feel that. But also the other.
Although we would welcome you with open arms, and so, you know, it's fine. We don't charge you to get over the bridge anymore. So.
There's the thing of going over the Thames almost, getting to the north side of the river.
Yes.
It's like, there's that weird little barriers. You're like,
Yeah.
feeling that does better.
Yeah.
Living on, whereas if I have particularly last couple of years, we get very dense part of the world,
Yeah.
and you go out and you come back, you actually enjoy that. It's
Yeah.
interesting that ability.
And it's exactly like you said, it's an internal thing. It's like, I can try and explain it, but it is just a feeling. And I think that is really what this kind of whole topic of like wilderness embodies, is just, because wilderness is really like, I was actually researching the proper meaning, so I was like, do I actually know what it, you know, you think you know what it means. But it was really this like, it's like this raw, and I think that's what we just need to return to, is just our truth. And so often in life, we run away from our truth, i.e. we run away from ourselves, and actually we have to do that. We have to like learn all the stuff, meet all the people, have all the knocks, have like, as my mum says, have the corners knocked off us, to then kind of, come back to that. If I hadn't left, I probably wouldn't feel that way at all. I'd probably be thinking, oh my God, why didn't I go? But I did leave. And so then I've come to that decision myself. And I think that's that important part. And like I said, it doesn't have to be radical, any of that. It can be just a feeling. Like you can bring that anywhere. It's not about having to sort of quit your job and go, it really isn't. I did that, but it doesn't need to be that way. It can be very much an internal sort of thing and like an energy that you then bring, wherever. Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more. Yes.
Hi. This was incredibly, it makes everyone think about their own lives, I think. I'm from India, and I actually grew up in Bombay, so just, kind of building on what you're saying, I've lived in the most densely populated city in the world, and I crave nature, right? Like, so for me, home doesn't feel that anymore. There's no comfort. I was like, I just want to get out. So I completely see like touching the soil and I have access to the sea, but no, I want to be in like forests and mountains. My question to you is on a day-to-day basis, how have you been able to manage this balance? Like, what does that look like? When you go home, how do you come back to London? How do you manage your work life? How do you manage to make enough money? How much have you compromised on your... Because I run a design studio as well, and I'm craving exactly what you're saying. Like, I just want to drop it and run. But then I'm also building something great, which I love. So it's very conflicting. And this whole idea of capitalism is so much, especially as designers, we realize how much waste we're creating in the world. And that's so conflicting with what we want to do. We want to be good people, we don't want to make packaging and that goes in landfills and destroys the world, but that's what we're paid for. So it's this whole thing. My question to you is, how do you manage this what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, it does definitely looks different every day because I have my own businesses, and sometimes I'm just like a bit bad, and if I'm just not feeling it for a week, then I won't do anything that week. And again, this isn't like some luxury of like, I have millions of pounds in my bank account. This is just, I go without less to be able to do that, right? Without less like material stuff. In fact, I don't ever really buy material stuff anyway. Food I buy. That is like always my indulgence. But I guess on a day-to-day balance, it's, okay, so intuition, like following what you really feel like you need, but also having a structure you do need, right? So like you need to be realistic with how much work you want to do per month, so that if you're craving nature, if you're craving those things, you actually work that in, not in like a Friday afternoon or just a Saturday. You go, no, do you know what? I know I'm going to need like a week, and I want to take myself and remove myself from X, Y, and Z. So on like a day-to-day, I still work within fashion in many ways. So at the moment, I'm working with like a LA company we're working with indigenous communities. So I'm about to start designing product with an indigenous community in Peru. So again, this aspect of like design and fashion and how we can do it in a healthy way, it does exist. Brands that are out there now, like waving the flag, we are the most sustainable brand, don't believe any of it. It's all nonsense. I can tell you because I've been in the fashion industry long enough. It's not real. When you're producing these seasonal collections, blah, 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 and you're going, oh yeah, but it's organic cotton, it's just not, it's not real. Yeah, it's like we have to go, but what does the world actually need? And we do need beauty, and we do need art and creativity, but like, we need to do it in the right way. And so working with indigenous communities is amazing, and the profits go back into their communities. I'm also working in Wales on a social enterprise project, which works with service users. So they make lots of products that, again, there's a small profit, but most of the profit goes back into them. I have my own business then in our studio. So, and I do actually holistic sustainability. So I do like multiple things for my own revenue, because I have to, obviously. Could I do more? Yes, probably. Like, could I work every hour? Yes, I could. Do I want to? No, because exactly like Al said, like my rich, well, it's like Bob Marley says, my riches are life. And they are, like, they really are. Like, when I get to just be in my garden and really, like, putting my hands in the earth and planting my things and watching my cats and going up to the mountain or getting back and coming to London and seeing friends and staying, like, that's really, like, my balance. And then, of course, you have those weeks where, like, you've got to push and you've got to get things done. But I'm not experiencing that level of, like, exhaustion, burnout, discontentment. So yeah, all I would say is the earlier you can, like, really sort of build your own kind of, like, manifesto, that you don't go off too much, like, you just come back to that, like, question things. Now the world, companies, everyone, they're open to questions. Before, they weren't really. You'd be booted out the door. But now you can ask questions. Well, why do we have to do this? And you can bring new things to the table because people want to listen. So it's actually a great time to build those structures for yourself and don't kind of deviate too much. I have a project partner who's here, Nicola, who none of what I do would be possible without. And then on kind of the Welsh like community projects, the social enterprises, it's bigger teams. They're not my teams. But I'm going in more as like a consultant. And then I do also lecturing for students in kind of creative fields, which is within teams as well. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that's all the
Thank
time
you.
that we have.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Another
you
round of
all
applause
so
for
much.
Marina.
Thank you.
I think Marina will hang around, so if you've got more